All right, we are at Media Row here in Moscone Center in San Francisco, brought to you by Toyota, and we're lounging on our Lazy Boy recliners. Long live the lazy, and I'm joined by Phil Perry of NBC Sports Boston. Phil, great to see you.
Great to see you, and can I just echo, long live the lazy, because if there's anything that I am, that word would be apt, and so I'm feeling extremely comfortable with you, as I always am, and extremely comfy in these Lazy Boy chairs.
Well, I'm sure I saw you at maybe the Super Bowl last year, or owners' meetings, or the Combine, but I do vividly recall one of our last meetings was, I don't even know what week it was. What week was it in 2024 when those Patriots came to Levi Stadium?
It was relatively early in the season, I think. Yeah, five, maybe somewhere in there.
And the thing that stood out is I remember you telling me at that point Jacoby Brissett was the starter, and you told me, and I think you went on the air and said there's no reason Drake Maye should not be the starting quarterback right now based on what you were hearing. So you probably aren't at all surprised at how well he played when he stepped in, because it seemed like he was ready.
He was ready, and one of the reasons he was not playing at that point in the season was because, and this is, just shows you where their roster was at that time, they were afraid they were going to get the guy hurt. There were signs, even in training camp last year as a rookie, as this guy who needed all sorts of work on his mechanics, and he needed so much development because he didn't play in a pro-style system in college, that he was going to need time. But there were signs in camp that he was better than Jacoby Brissett, and there was an argument to be made then that he should have been the starter. So I'm not surprised that he looked like a starting quarterback at times last year. I am surprised, Matt, he's been as good this year as he's been, because even as someone, and we were so invested in that quarterback class in 2024 because we knew they were taking one, we just didn't know which one, and having looked at them and having talked to people in the league who were evaluating these guys, I came away with the opinion, just given his traits that we knew off the field and his physical traits, the ability to throw the ball from all different platforms, the mobility, the toughness that he showed, and his size. His size was a real factor. I said, this is, to me, the best quarterback prospect in this draft. Even though I felt that way before the draft, I'm still surprised that he's been as good as he's been. I never thought he'd be in the MVP conversation in year 2. I thought maybe year 4, year 5, at some point he'd be better than Jaden Daniels. At some point everyone would see him as the better player and the better, future, brighter future maybe than Caleb Williams. I did not think it would happen this early.
Yeah, it's interesting how the Patriots have worked the draft. The 49ers kind of have this theory, it seems like, based on what they've done, offensive linemen, it has to be a really special guy for them to take an offensive lineman early in the draft. They feel like there's better value in getting a playmaker. They feel like a playmaker can cover up for the mistakes of the offensive line, and you could have a play blocked perfectly, and if you don't have a quarterback and a receiver that can hook up, it doesn't matter. My point is, the Patriots took Will Campbell. How do you feel that has worked out, having an offensive tackle taken at, was it 4?
It was 4,
yes. 4 overall.
I think it's worked because they have the job staffed. They did not have the job staffed going into this offseason and really coming out of free agency. They just weren't able to get that player. And we know, you guys have been so fortunate to be able to watch Trent Williams in San Francisco and just what a specimen he is to be able to handle that position. And you can make the argument it's the second most difficult in the sport. So these guys don't grow on trees. They needed one. They got one. He has been, I would say, more than serviceable when healthy. Really rough early postseason. I don't know how closely you watch the AFC playoff games, but against the Chargers and against the Texans, he got worked over on a number of different occasions. And Drake Maye had a fumbling issue, fumbled half a dozen times in those 2 games. Several of those were because of pressure coming off of the left tackle. Now, he suffered an MCL injury late in the season, which made him, I think, a little lesser player through those first 2 postseason games, wild card round and divisional round. AFC Championship game, he went against a very good rusher, Nick Bonito. Very productive in terms of pressure rate and gave all kinds of left tackles, all kinds of problems all season, and he held his own. And so he's not the prototype. He's not long. He's a great athlete. But to me, he's good enough to play an incredibly difficult position, which made that sort of draft capital worth it. Now, to your point about the lineman versus the playmaker, I think the Patriots might have gone with the playmaker had the playmaker been there. If Travis Hunter, for some reason, fell to them at 4, it would not have surprised me if they had went and gotten that guy and said, you know what, Drake Maye's going to need somebody to grow alongside with. We have nothing in terms of juice at that position. And so that wouldn't have stunned me, but the way it worked out, Campbell was the obvious choice.
Yeah, the AFC is been interesting to watch in that, for years, I'm going to throw Justin Herbert into the mix too, even though they haven't had the postseason success. A guy that tons of talent, but the other quarterbacks, Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar. That's always been kind of the murderer's row to get out of the AFC, and not too many teams have done it. What changed to open the door for an upstart Broncos team with a young quarterback, an upstart Patriots team with a young quarterback? Heck, even the Texans with their defense, and C.J. Stroud isn't as good as he was as a rookie, but isn't it interesting to just see how quickly things can change?
It really is remarkable. I think number one with the Patriots, you start with the entirety of their offseason. So obviously adding Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels on the coaching staff paid huge dividends. The fact that they were able, Matt, to have this incredible hit rate in free agency between Garrett Bradbury, Morgan Moses on the offensive line, Stephon Diggs giving them more than they even thought they would get. Even though they're paying him, a relatively high salary for a guy who's 32 years old and coming off a torn ACL. On the defensive side, guy like Kayvon Chason, who's a former high-end first-round pick, really hasn't done anything in the league until this year. Like, the number of pieces that had to fall into place for them to have the level of success that they had is hard to fathom. But you combine that with this confluence of negative outcomes that these other great teams have experienced, injuries to Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, which really kind of tanked their team's seasons. Patrick Mahomes is on a roster where he's throwing to former Patriots receivers, like cast-off receivers in New England. That just tells you that should be a wake-up call for the Juju Smith-Schusters and the Tyquan Thorntons of the world, but those are the guys that Kansas City's trying to bring in to try to play with their Hall of Fame quarterback. And so that roster was not a championship caliber roster, so they had to have a lot of things fall right for them. The Patriots were lucky in that they had the easiest schedule in recent NFL history to help them to a 14-2 record and 2 home playoff games. So this is, Tom Curran and I, our mutual buddy, Tom Curran, talk about this all the time. There's that saying, you wish somebody told you when you are living in the good old days so that you could enjoy them and appreciate them a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like, these are the good old days for the New England Patriots, because it'll never be like this again. Expectations starting next year are going to ratchet up. There's going to be more pressure. They probably aren't going to win 14 games again. They might not be back in the Super Bowl. So this has just been, it really has been a magical year for them. It's going to be hard for them to replicate.
That's funny you say that, because in 2019, when the 49ers kind of came out of nowhere and made it to the Super Bowl, I was talking to Bob Myers, the then Warriors general manager, and he said that. He's like, our first championship with the Warriors, I would have enjoyed it more because things change. The pressure of now everybody's expecting it. You're expecting it. Now it's the grind. It's that constant drive to get back there, that you're always kind of chasing the dragon in a way.